But you'd think every school child would know who William Wilberforce was.
Well, it used to be. When he died, there was sort of some sort of national mourning, like when Nelson died. Like everyone was upset. He was some sort of hero. In fact, Lincoln. There's a quote from Lincoln saying, "Every schoolboy is familiar with Wilberforce."
Well, it probably was in Lincoln's day, but
in the 19th century,
yeah.
But no, we're not encouraged to remember the abolitionist movement, the British abolitionist movement anymore.
Well, I think there's a few reasons for that. It was very Christian.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to give the Christians any credit.
No, full credit to them.
Yeah.
Because this is absolutely born out of sort of a Christian morality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And no one wants to give them like that win, and it's like, well, they deserve it. If it wasn't for Christian charity, this probably wouldn't be the case.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I'm not a Christian, but I'm sort of Christian adjacent, if you like.
I'm definitely sympathetic to Christians.
Right, yeah. If I'm at the pearly gates and they say you've got to choose one,
well,
of course I say that, yeah. So Wilberforce has been called the conscience of the nation, because he did really sort of over decades change what he called manners, but what we would just call morals. In the late 18th century, manners were a lot more coarse. Life was a lot cheaper. And by the Victorian age, as he dies in 1833, it's a lot more humane. I think it's fair to say.
I would suggest that it's a dramatic improvement to what had come before. I mean, one of the things I quite like about the Victorians is the austere moralizing of them. It's a particular moral code that they follow as well, which I find interesting. You know, it's not abstract, right? It seems like quite real. You know, as in it's for real things. You know, it's for lords and ladies and men and women, and you know, the propriety is the thing that they're being dogmatically moral about, rather than an abstract code. And so I find Victorian moralizing quite different to modern moralizing, which is very abstract about categories. You know, like. But anyway, so
they were looking for like the betterment of all. Wilberforce and others talked about sort of the better hour. Bringing about a better hour for people.
But it was a kind of moralizing that wasn't revolutionary, right? It was situated within the civilization. You know, it didn't hate its own civilization.
Right, yeah.
And in fact, it was like, okay, well, actually, we can do something great here, you know, which is why I find it kind of appealing. You know, I guess I'm just tired of people trying to overthrow our civilization.
Yeah. No, they wanted to build upon what they already had and make it better.
Yeah.
Reduce the suffering of people where possible, because Wilberforce didn't just campaign just for abolitionism and emancipation, but also loads of other things.
Right. Okay.
You know, like helping out orphans and all sorts of things.
Oh, that's great.
Loads of different things. Yeah. Trying to abolish poverty and things. All sorts of stuff.
Okay.
He was, and living in the late 18th century, early 19th century, he was a contemporary of some great people, loads of great people, among them Burke. He was a member of Parliament, Wilberforce, as was Burke. And the famous line of Burke, the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing, may well come from, or it's all part of the Wilberforce story, because William Wilberforce is a great example of one man against the odds, at least to begin with. One man making a difference, realising that he was facing a mountainous challenge on his own, almost on his own.
Massive entrenched financial interests.
Right. So that's the thing to say then about slavery straight away, is that it was something like, you could make some sort of equivalency with something like maybe the arms trade today, where there's giant vested interests, giant amounts of money on the line, whole swathes of society and jobs and all sorts of things, and industry all bound up in it, all wanting it to keep going. And then there's just the moral objection to it.
Well, one thing I think is interesting is the slave trade and the empire generally was kind of outside of the control of the government in many ways. Like, it happened far away, and it happened because of independent people being entrepreneurial, right? You know, explorers go to Africa, they find Africans selling other Africans, and okay, well, we could take them to use them on private plantations in the Americas. You know, so it's kind of, it's something that has been done, I don't want to say organically, but you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't some great plot that the British Empire was like, ha ha ha, now we can create the largest slave trade in the world. It was something that kind of grew up, right?
Well, to begin with, its roots were like that,
yeah. And then, of course, it gets kind of codified. But
just like the East India Company, by the late 18th century, early 19th century, Parliament had passed acts so they sort of formally controlled things. But but
like you were saying, by the time of the 19th century, it's a massive industry, and there are tens of thousands of jobs involved in it. You know, huge livelihoods, fortunes have been made. So it is a massive industry that grows up. And then, you've got this one guy being like, but it is terrible.
Yeah. Like a moral sin, a national disgrace. So that's one of the things I want to say, where in our day, people just try and make the argument that Britain is somehow ultimately guilty and got the stain of the crimes of our ancestors. Well, on some level, as every people and nation, but don't get any sort of credit for the abolitionist thing, which was, there were so many sort of good people, a grassroots movement, and there's still slavery in the world today.
Well, this is another thing that really annoys me. It's I recall reading on, I think it was Parliament's website actually, about a petition that a 30,000 person signed petition, which is a lot in the 19th century, that the women of England had stitched together, and it was like 3 miles long, and then delivered it to Parliament, demanding on Christian grounds the abolition of slavery. And no one talks about it.
They would have massive petition drives where the ordinary working class people that lived in penury themselves, of Liverpool, of London, of Bristol, would sign in their droves saying, we're against this. We would love Parliament to abolish it. Yeah.
And no one talks about it.
So where's the equivalent of that in Nigeria? Oh, they've still got slavery in Nigeria today. Oh, that's interesting. In Nigeria? Yeah, let's have a quick look at the list of countries where the most... India, China, North Korea, maybe obviously, Nigeria, Iran, Indonesia, Congo, Philippines, Afghanistan. Millions of slaves today in all those countries.
The only people who have to take accountability for their slavery are those people who are morally susceptible to be to listen to the arguments against slavery. Because, I mean, a lot of these countries simply don't find a problem with it.
Right, yeah.
We find a problem with it, and so we can be beaten with that stick. So we're like, no, we agree. We've conceded the moral argument that slavery is wrong. And we did something about it, but of course... a reasonable person would let it lie there, but of course, if you're not a reasonable person, you're just trying to beat us with a stick. Well, you've got the perfect one.
If any Indian, someone from the Indian subcontinent or sub-Saharan African, tries to play the moral higher ground with Brits about slavery, it's absolute disgusting nonsense. Did
you see the clip of a Tunisian man going around recently?
No.
Well, he was being interviewed by a Tunisian journalist, and the Tunisian man was saying, well, look, we don't like the sub-Saharan Africans here because they have different moral values to us, and they should be deported back.
So Tunisian. So was he sort of Berber or something?
Yeah. He was North African,
right? Right. Not sub-Saharan African. Okay, I see.
So he's like Mediterranean looking,
right.
And he's like, we should deport them back to sub-Saharan Africa. And the journalist, who is also North African, says, well, have you ever met any of the sub-Saharan Africans? And he's like, have I ever met them? My grandfather used to sell them. And it's like, okay, all right then. I mean.
It's funny, isn't it? Also, Arabic people trying to have the high ground.
Oh, they've got no
absolute nonsense. I always mention Lawrence of Arabia, don't I? I can't help it.
Yeah.
There's some famous pictures of Lawrence at the 1919 Versailles conference with Faisal, Faisal the First, Faisal al-Hussein, al-Hashemi. And he's got a giant Sudanese slave with him.
Yeah.
In the early 20th century.
Well, Saudi Arabia didn't ban slavery until 1963.
Right.
1963. We had jet aircraft at that point. Television. And slaves.
Elvis,
yeah.
Right.
The
I mean,
Beatles, it's madness. So
I'm going to put up that picture of Faisal with his giant Sudanese slave.
Fascinating, why not? But yeah. So anyway, we don't take lectures about slavery from other people.
Yeah, we should not. We absolutely should not.
I don't.
And if anyone says anything about it, just bring up the name. Just intone the name Wilberforce.
Yeah.
One historian said, Wilberforce shows us that everyone... Wait. Not someone said. Archbishop Desmond Tutu said, Wilberforce shows us that everyone can make a difference. Few of us will be in Parliament as Wilberforce was, but all of us are part of community. All of us can find ways to serve others and bring about the good society.
Again, you can't help but feel that in the light of history, the attitude towards slavery being a moral wrong is kind of located only in Christianity. I can't. I mean, the progressives will say, "Well, what about us? We're secular." It's like, yeah, but your secular worldview is informed by the Christian roots that it was built upon. So you didn't come to this in isolation.
Yeah,
and other cultures around the world haven't come to this at all.
It was definitely born out of Wilberforce's Christian worldview as well.
I remember seeing Benjamin Franklin's letter to, I can't remember, the president or whatever. He was arguing on Christian grounds that slavery should be abolished because we're all children of God. And it was explicitly Christian argument he was making. And it's like, okay, where do you see that in other cultures around the world? And the answer is you just don't. What you see is the British Navy coming up and forcing them to stop slaving.
To watch the full video, please become a premium member at lotuseaters.com.